Welcome everyone to the December meeting of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. Please rise while Supervisor Sokol leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer? Here. Mr. Loeb?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan? Here. Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Merlino?
Here.
Mr. Strauss?
Here.
Mr. Wiles?
Here.
Mr. Beatty? Mr. McGowan? Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Conover?
Here. You should all have received the minutes of our November 16 board meeting. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Simpson, Ms. Bramer on the second. Ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. We'll now move on. Dr. Seeley in a presentation of award to Adriana Drndik, one of the grand prize photo contest winners in the Inspired by Science contest. Dr. Seeley.
Good morning. This is Adriana Drndik, one of our Warren County 4-H people. She, as was said, is one of the grand prize winners in the Inspired by Science contest presented by Bayer and the National 4-H Foundation. Adriana, two guests, your mom and dad, who are on the left. We'll be going to Washington, D.C. for the National Youth Summit on Agri-Science, January 10th to 13th. He's also a member of the Warren County 4-H Guide Program, which John Ball, our team coordinator, heads up, and recently proposed for Environmental Community Service Project Green Team, which focuses on food. So, congratulations. I think the chairman has
Do we have a camera here? Take a picture?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Adriana, this is Dr. Simpson presenting to you on behalf of the Warren County Board of Supervisors in recognition of the achievements of being chosen as one of the 3 grand prize winners for the Inspired by Science photo contest, as well as in recognition of membership in the Warren County 4-H Pedagogic Guide Program. It's my honor to present the board to present to you at this time.
And now I'd like to introduce Marissa Moltori, who would like to address the board regarding High Peaks Hospice.
I don't see that she's here, Chairman.
That's all right. Well, then we'll reschedule Marissa at some future date. At this time, I'd like to declare a public hearing open on Warren County Community Development Block Grant Project number 1197 CP66-17, Countryside Adult Home Building Study, and request the clerk to read the notice.
The Warren County Board of Supervisors will hold a public hearing on Friday, December 21st, 2018 at 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors meeting room, second floor of the Warren County Municipal Center, 1340 State Route 9, Lake George, New York, for the purpose of hearing public comments on Warren County's current Community Development Block Grant, CDBG project number 1197 CP66-17, Countryside Adult Home Building Study. The CDBG program is administered by the New York State Office of Community Renewal and provides resources to eligible local governments for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure and planning activities with the principal purposes of benefiting low to moderate income persons. The hearing will provide further information about the progress of the ongoing CDBG project. Comments related to the effectiveness of the administrative of the CDBG project will also be received at this time. The hearing is being conducted pursuant to Section 570.486, Subpart 1 of the CFR, and in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended.
We have with us Pat Tadich. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members
Perhaps you could briefly let the board know what this is about.
Yes, this is a required public hearing for the funding that the county received for a building study for the Countryside adult home. We initially had applied for improvement monies for that residential facility, and the agency was concerned that we weren't addressing all issues and encouraged us to apply for study money so as to have a more complete understanding of the status of that building, what's needed, how to better market it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we did that, and we were fortunate in getting, we applied for and received $43,237. Of that, however, the total project is $45,399. The county was responsible for a small 5% cash match of $2,162. Today we had we put out proposals. The purchasing department was very helpful with that. We kind of worked together on that, and I did work most recently with Commissioner Hanchett on the work the study that's supposed to be done there, and he's going to be a part of that, the project partners going forward on that. So that's certainly a good thing. We did receive, we had to extend the bid time a bit because we were not getting proposals back, and we finally did get 2 proposals back from 2 architectural/engineering companies. We reviewed those. We have kind of identified the one that I think is most appropriate, and we have questions for them. However, we're not at the phase right now where we can say, okay, this is our recommendation to the board for who's to be selected. So we expect that to occur in January. Excuse me. We are only allowing 60 days for the study to be completed. We are going to ask for a 3-month extension to mid-May on this particular project. And do I have anything else here? Oh, there are 4 planned meetings. The first one being the site visit, and the last one being the presentation to the board on the status of that report. Do I have anything else? That's it. That's all I have today.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board regarding this during this public hearing? There being no one, I will close the public hearing. Pat, if you could just stay at the podium. Is there any of the supervisors have any questions for Pat? Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to recognize the planning department and the work that Pat did in securing this. This is much needed, and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions? All righty. I will now declare a public hearing open on a proposed fixed-base operator lease agreement with Skimmerhorn Aviation 2 Incorporated, and request the clerk to read the notice of public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Warren, New York is considering the approval of a proposed fixed-base operator lease agreement with Skimmerhorn Aviation 2 Inc., which lease addresses a number of issues, generally including but not limited to leased and/or licensed premises, privileges, uses, rights and interests, rental payments, taxes, utilities, services by lessee, future construction by lessee, non-exclusive rights reservations, default by lessee, cancellation by lessor, cancellation by lessee, suspension and abatement, or substantial casualty or loss, indemnity and insurance, surrender of possession, rules and regulations, inspection by lessor books, records and audits, rights to close airport facilities, assignment, sublease, non-discrimination, anti-drug program notices, and a provision for an initial term of 10 years commencing January 1, 2019, and a subsequent renewal option of 10 years upon certain terms and conditions. Notice is further given that pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors on November 16, 2018, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Supervisors on December 21, 2018 at 10 a.m. in the Supervisors' Rooms at the Warren County Municipal Center, Route 9, Queensbury, New York, at which time and place all persons interested in the matter of such proposed fixed-base operator lease agreement will be heard concerning same. A copy of said resolution and proposed fixed office operator lease agreement is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the above stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the Board of Supervisors during this public hearing regarding the FBO lease agreement? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Harrison Freer, Queensbury, representing the pilots through Airport Pilot and Owner Association for Glens Falls Airport. And I thank everyone for working hard at this renegotiation. I think it's the right thing to do. Our group supports the operation and look forward to continuing improvement there. And we are committed to work so that the airport becomes a revenue-neutral thing for the taxpayers of Warren County. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came in part today to ask you to please vote for this extension. I think Rich Skimoran has done an outstanding job. I appreciate all of the people who have worked in a bipartisan way and a spirit of cooperation to work on this agreement. I think the airport's a gem, and you've got a great FBO out there. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time from the audience? There being no one, I'll close the public hearing. There will be resolution to follow in this regard if you wish to speak during that time. The next public hearing is in regard to Local Law Number 1 of 2019, a local law fixing the salaries of certain county officers and employees of Warren County. I'll now ask the clerk to read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Warren, New York is considering the adoption of a proposed local law number 1 for the year 2019 entitled A Local Law Fixing the Salaries of Certain County Officers and Employees of Warren County. Notice is further given that pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors on November 16, 2018, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Supervisors on December 21, 2018 at 10 a.m. in the Supervisors' Rooms at the Warren County Municipal Center, 1340 State Route 9, Queensbury, New York, at which time and place all persons interested in the matter of such proposed local law number 1 for the year 2019 will be heard concerning same. A copy of said local law is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the above stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board during this public hearing regarding this matter? There being no one, I'll close the public hearing. Report of the Chairman of the Board. It's a very busy month. November 19th, I attended a number of committee meetings. On November 20, I also attended the budget meeting, OCTAX, Health and Human Services, County Facilities. On November 29th, I attended Personnel and Finance. On the 2nd and 3rd, I attended the Adirondack Association Towns and Village Conference in Lake George. Matt, congratulations. It was a wonderful conference and was very interesting information regarding Adirondack issues and solutions. December 6th, I attended a joint meeting put on by the Fund for Lake George and the Town of Lake George, where we were presented an overview of the Joint Fund for Lake George and Town of Lake George Septic Initiative on Lake George. It was a fascinating presentation. I know, Dennis, that the Town of Lake George and the Fund have been working on this a number of years. Congratulations to you and your partners and to the property owners that are participating in this program. It's all going to be good for the lake. That afternoon, I attended the county facilities meeting. In the evening, I attended the Warren County EDC Christmas party at the Park Theater. It was a wonderful event. The theater was wonderful. There were a number of supervisors there. And I have to say, driving into Glens Falls, the way the town looked, how festive it was, the people on the streets, in the shops, and etc. It was really, as a former urban planner, I can tell you, it was just a wonderful thing to witness. And my congratulations to the city for their efforts in the rejuvenation of Glens Falls. It is just a tremendous thing to witness. And I also got to use the parking garage, which was immediately near there. It was easy access, easy out. It was a wonderful facility. On the 12th, I attended the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council meeting at Crandall Library. On the 17th, I attended the Warren County Soil and Water District lunch meeting, their year-end meeting, where they conducted their monthly meeting, but also did a review of their 2018 projects. Frank, to you and the district and the other members of the district, a really impressive array of projects that have been done this year throughout the county. I think all of us know what a great asset the Soil and Water Conservation District is and the work that they do. And so congratulations to you and the board on just a tremendous and successful 2018.
Thank you.
At 2 o'clock, I attended the Public Works meeting that afternoon, largely centered on solid waste and recyclable disposal. It's obvious to all of us that the cost of disposal and recyclables has gone up, and we are faced with some significant budget pressures in this regard, but I have to say, and I have to give credit to Julie Butler and our purchasing department that's been handling this for the municipalities in the county. She's been doing an absolutely spectacular job and has taken a great load off of the towns that are involved to help us get to the best place possible within this market. And so kudos to our purchasing department and specifically Julie Butler. On December 19th, I attended a meeting in Albany at New York State Department of Transportation that was arranged by the Fund for Lake George regarding the SALT initiative. Mayor Blaze could not attend, and so they asked me to fill in. It was an excellent meeting. We discussed the demonstration project on Route 9N, and of course they have one up in the Lake Placid area as well. And it's just a great thing to see the New York State Department of Transportation joining Warren County and its municipalities in a program to try to reduce the amount of sodium going into the environment and therefore going into our waters. And I have to say, I found after the meeting I was greatly encouraged by the progress that was being made. On December 20th, I attended a work meeting here at the county building with staff regarding a workplace violence plan. I have to say I found the meeting very informative. The very professional staff we have, very concerned about the safety of our employees and the safety of our customers, and I have to say I'm very pleased and impressed with the level of effort that's being placed by our staff and others to make sure we have as safe a possible workplace. Just one notice that I've asked the county administrator to prepare a complete and comprehensive briefing, probably for early next year, if it can be ready by then, to address the whole question of equalization and apportionment and, of course, sales tax. I view that workshop as just part of a series, perhaps, of workshops so that everybody hears the same story at the same time from the same people. And hopefully the county administrator can be, and others can be ready sometime perhaps in the first 2 weeks of January. I would also let you all know that the tax rolls are ready for pickup. Your town clerks, I'm sure, are eagerly awaiting them, so please do not forget after the meeting to pick up the tax rolls. And finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish all of you a very joyful holiday including, of course, all of the residents of Warren County, and to wish you all a most happy New Year. Thank you. And that concludes my report. All right. If without objection, I'd like to retreat to the Marissa Multari. If you're now here, if you'd like to address the board.
Good morning. I'm cupbearing gifts. For those that don't know me, my name is Marissa Multari. I'm the fundraising coordinator for High Peak Hospice.
Can you go to the mic?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It makes it easier for people who are watching later to hear you.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so good morning. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. For those that don't know me, my name is Marissa Multari. I'm the fundraising coordinator for High Peaks Hospice. We cover Warren, Washington, Essex, Franklin, and Hamilton counties. Thank you, Ben, for helping me coordinate this. So High Peaks Hospice is 32 years old. How many in this room are familiar with High Peaks Hospice? Okay. So when I go around and talk to different clubs and agencies and organizations, the question that I like to ask is, if you were to be diagnosed with a terminal illness today, would you call hospice? And I get all answers from, if that were to happen, I would go hide in the woods forever until I pass, to if they do have that experience, absolutely no questions. But there's still a lot of people out there that have no idea what hospice is, and they think hospice and they automatically think death. Or they say, I should be saying yes right now, but I'm too young. So I encourage everyone to really start the conversation earlier, so when that does happen, God forbid that does happen, you are prepared. If we ask if you know anyone that has been diagnosed with a terminal illness, to maybe recommend hospice if their doctor already hasn't, because we like to think hospice is so much more than death. It really is helping everyone enjoy what's left of their life. And we have a new logo. I invite all of you to come on January 14th to our open house at 454 Glen Street in Glens Falls. We're doing a new initiative to kind of start thinking about, are we living our best life right now? We all say we have a bucket list, but is it written down or is it in our head? When was the last time that we checked something off that bucket list? When was the last time that we even thought about it or looked at it? So my job is really to raise awareness and help educate and just start the conversation sooner. I'm not sure if everyone saw, we did have an article in the Post-Star a couple weeks ago for Giving Tuesday. So I just asked if everyone could just help us by raising awareness and kind of changing that misconception. And I wish you all a happy holiday and all the best for the new year as well. And I will hand out the gifts that I bear.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I might say, for hospice, the service it does provide our community, as we look over the year, that how many in our communities have passed and how many have benefited by hospice being there during that time. It's an invaluable service, so we thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Report of Committee Chairman, Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance did meet on November 29th. In your packet are resolutions 463, 464, 522 through 531, and 533 for your consideration. I typically highlight some of the resolutions, but this month's tended to be more on the housekeeping, and if you do have any questions, I can answer them probably. But otherwise, that is my report. But I would like to have, although Treasurer Swan does not have a report, he would like to address the committee.
Absolutely. Mike, how are you?
Good morning.
Happy
Good morning,
holidays.
everybody. Glad you could all make it on this beautiful day. Just two quick things. One, it looks like we're going to end the year a little bit over 5% increase on our sales tax, which is great news. And the other is, I just want to wish everybody a happy holidays and a great new year, and we'll see you all back here to start all over again in January.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee did meet on November 20th. The purpose of that meeting was to review the contracts and agreements that the Warren County Board has with various organizations. The result of that meeting produced resolutions 465 through 477, 13 in total. I'll just run through them real quick. The Southern Adirondack Library System, the City of Glens Falls, Adirondack North Country Association, Warren County Historical Society, money for towns that have lakes in their town for invasive species, $100,000 to the Lake George Park Commission for boat washing, Lakes to Locks, Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District, the Economic Development Corporation, the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board, the Sky Farm Youth Camping Program, Cornell Cooperative Extension, and the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board.
Thank you.
My report.
And Frank, thank you for entertaining these proposals. As the members know, many of these resolutions were falling into our organizational meeting in January and not moving through our committee structure, and it particularly became a problem in years where we had new members. And I think 2 years ago we initially moved it, Matt, to your committee, and thank you for entertaining the resolutions then. And Frank, for you doing it now, I think it's just a much better way to handle these resolutions through our normal order of business. And that way they can be fully vetted in committee, and I thank you. Supervisor Hyde.
Thank you. No report.
Supervisor Garrity.
We had a short personnel and higher education meeting. I have two resolutions, 532, which fixes the salaries of local law number 1 of 2019, and then the other one is the payment to SUNY Adirondack for next year's stipend. That's it.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Criminal Justice Public Safety met on November 19th. There are 8 resolutions before you, 485 through 492. 6 are for agreements or MOUs. 2 are for awarding bids for vehicle repair, maintenance, and 1 is from Office of Emergency Services.
Thank you. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you today, there are resolutions 478 through 482 for your consideration. Those are facility-related airport resolutions for your consideration. Resolutions 483 and 484 are directed towards building and grounds. What I'd like to mention at this point in time, I'd like to thank supervisors that are on the Facilities Committee, Mr. McDevitt, Mr. Sokol, Mr. Beatty, and their hard work and the time that they took to sit down and negotiate an agreement with Richard Air to be our fixed-base operator. The terms of the agreement make sense. He's demonstrated in the past that he's done a great job there. He does a great job with maintenance. He does a great job with promoting our community. And I think it's an agreement that works fair and equitable for the county and along with Rich Air. So thank you, supervisors, for your hard work on that. I'd also like to point out to Supervisor Wild, who took on the task of finding what our best options were with the property that we own in the town of Queensbury on River Street. It's a recycling center at this point in time. He's put a lot of work into it. We had a healthy discussion on December 6th talking about the future of the building, what options we would consider, whether we wanted to sell it, whether we wanted to lease it. But I think the resolution in front of you today is referencing that particular property as property that is not necessarily needed by the county. But I'd like to point out and thank Supervisor Wild. He again put a step forward and worked hard in bringing that issue to the forefront. thank you, Mr. Wild, for your help. This concludes my year as the facilities chairman. It's been an interesting year working in a committee structure with 11 different personalities and opinions. Sometimes make it difficult to achieve any goals that you may set out. However, I found it very interesting listening to everybody's opinion. I've enjoyed it immensely. So thank you so much for your cooperation and your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jack, and excellent work. Supervisor McDevitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also attended the EDC Christmas party at the Park Theater in Glens Falls a couple of weeks ago. The Park Theater is just a great addition to the city and provides just a great venue for events like that. An issue that has been in the newspaper in the last couple of days, and I think it's a Glens Falls issue as well, as well as a county issue, and it has to do with the cement company, Lehigh Northeast Cement Company in Glens Falls. And the business is looking to burn a mixture to replace, the utilization of gas with a mixture of 40% paper and 60% plastic called Raggertail. And this is an alternative fuel source to natural gas and coal. The company has said that the change would keep the material from landfills, reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, and reduce the plant's energy costs. A number of concerns in terms of air quality have been raised as it relates to this particular permitting approval. I reached out to John Bro from Behan Communications, who represents Lehigh, and we communicated via email yesterday. I would support an extension of that deadline to ensure additional public comment. This is an area that is probably left better to the scientists and the professionals, and hopefully additional public comment will enable citizens in our area to feel comfortable that the permitting process is acceptable, that the air we breathe is indeed going to be okay. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Perhaps you might like to bring someone into your committee to make a presentation on this as well.
Great, I will. That's a great suggestion.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I am not a chair of a committee, so I don't have a committee report, but I will piggyback on what Supervisor McDevitt just said. I did talk to John Brott this week as well, and I applaud the company for looking for an alternative source for their fuel and trying to divert some of this from landfills and incinerators, but my concern is that if they are burning it as a cement kiln, that they do not have in place all of the controls for the emissions from now burning plastic. So it's something we really need to take a close look at, especially since last year the governor announced that we had the highest rate of cancer in the entire state, and the governor's office has been studying this. So when you burn plastic, it emits things that may cause cancer. That's very concerning to our public, and we all need to be assured that when they switch to a different fuel source, that they are doing everything possible to make sure that our health is protected while they are protecting their jobs and their economic growth at the plant. Thank you. Bring them in. Let us see what's happening and what they're doing.
Let's talk about it, and let's deal from a position of knowledge and scientific analysis. That's the best we can do.
Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I discuss the support committee meeting issues, I want to actually pick up on what Supervisor Bramer just alluded to, and that's the fact that she wanted to make a statement, but there doesn't seem to be any place that we can easily say, oh, this is when I can speak to the board. I think I've addressed this, asked this once before, perhaps 5, 6 years ago. But it would be nice at this point, it seems to be a logical point for us to address other supervisors and the chair. If in this heading, reports by committee chairman, that's committee chairman on past month meetings and activities, as well as supervisor comments, so that as I will make a short statement after my committee issues, I say, okay, this is where I can talk about my committee issues or my personal issues as far as my job as supervisor without being disruptive to the board.
We have always, at least I have, and I believe my predecessors have always addressed all supervisors during a report of committees. It's important that we stay with our order of business, which are the action items of this board, but I have allowed, and I believe my predecessors have allowed, short statements addressing other issues that may not be in order of business. Normally I like it to keep it as brief as possible. We do have agendas and we do have an order of business, but this would be the time where if you wish to make a brief statement regarding other matters of county business or other business, this would be the time.
You're absolutely correct. You've always allowed it, and Chairman Garrity allowed it. That's the standard. But when you have a new supervisor coming into the mix, they will feel uncomfortable. Where can I put in my 2 cents? So it'd be a good idea just to say in black and white, this is a good time to put in your 2 cents. So to proceed, support committee did meet, and it was actually a meeting 3 times as long as originally scheduled. A lot of activities. There's several items on the agenda today which came out of the support committee, which are well described in the packet that we have, as well as from the minutes in the support services committee. So I appreciate your support for that. For my own supervisor issues, I began this year with 2 primary goals. One was to address the need I felt to support our veterans along the lines of a veterans court. Well, it turns out there are not enough veterans in Warren County who come before the court system to warrant having a veterans court. And speaking with Justice Apperdew, said indeed he feels that all the judges in the area are in full support of the veterans, and yet for some reason we can't come to some sort of agreement on a process to formally be prepared to help the veterans along the concept of veterans court. I can see the frustration that public has all the time with bureaucracy and working with government. Here we are as supervisors, and each of us at different times has problems getting our points across and making progress. The other thing that I have really been frustrated with was the issue of our nursing homes in Warren County. And we had a county nursing home, and we sold it, and our intentions were all honorable, and our hopes were perhaps too high. And it turns out that when we had the nursing home, we had a stellar rating, provided good service, great service, and now the nursing homes, at least in Warren County, the Stanton Nursing Home, not getting good grades. The nursing home, formerly Westmount, not getting good grades. So I thought, well, if the inspectors are not able to improve the situation, the inspectors from the state are not able to improve the situation, perhaps the county health department could help out. While I didn't get a lot of support within the county to address that, I was allowed to proceed to see if I could get the state to respond. And basically their response was, it's really too complicated for anybody in Warren County to be able to walk into a nursing home and make judgments on whether they're running a good operation or not, which I took great exception to. But again, I can see the frustration that our everyday citizens have with government, when even within government we're facing bureaucratic roadblocks in getting things done. So perhaps we can make some progress along that line next year also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the chairmen of the committees that I've been privileged to serve on this year for their leadership. Also, the chairman of the committees that I don't serve on, I've tried to make their meetings as often as I can. I hope that my contributions have been helpful this year. I look forward to learning more and participating more this coming year. And today, of particular interest to me are resolutions 500 and 501, which I believe Supervisor Dickinson will be articulating in a few minutes. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I should just note for the board that resolution number 482 will be a roll call. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health, Human, and Social Services met on November 20th. The result of those meetings, we have 6 resolutions, 494 through 499, one that deals with authorizing an agreement, providing leadership training for the youth that are involved in the workforce program, amending an agreement with North Country Home Services, executing a 3-year lease for office space for mental health, reappointing a member to the Warren County Community Board, authorizing agreements with Community Services Board, and the last one authorizes agreements with Community Services to provide specialized mental health crisis respite services for the youth. I'd appreciate your support on that. I would like to say that I have appreciated working with the various department heads this year. I feel that's been a very rewarding experience for me. We do have a wonderful staff, and I think sometimes we don't really realize just what a wonderful job they do for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Frazier. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. DPW met on November 19th, and in your packets we have resolutions starting with 506 through 513. Most of those are contracts for professional services. One of them is for the renewal agreements for the snowmobile trail maintenance and equipment for 2019. And then 513 is an agreement with the town of Bolton for funding for the Up Yonder Farm property up there for 2019. And then on November 26th, Cornell Cooperative Extension met, and actually I'm honored to say that Dr. Seeley informed me that they were awarded a grant that they had been working on for the amount of $93,582 for a farm-to-school grant, which will allow Cornell to connect local farmers to school districts by bringing fresh produce to the school cafeterias, creating better nutrition for our students. This is something they had been working on for quite a while, and they've been successful, and congratulations. Thank you. On December, I can't remember the date, I had it written down here. Let me turn the page over. I don't have the date. Well, anyway, we had another DPW meeting, and it was on solid waste. It was December 17th, and we were reviewing the contracts for all of our municipal solid waste. There was a question on our plastics, where our plastic recyclables were going, whether they were actually going to the intended recycling processors, or are they ending up in our burn plant. They are, in fact, we got a communication from Julie Butler from purchasing, they are, in fact, going to the recycling processors, and it's being properly processed, not burned in the burn plant. So I would, those are resolutions 545, 546, and 547, which were put on our tables today. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time, or do you wait till resolutions to...
We would wait till resolutions, I think. And just for your information, the Bolton Town Board will have to do an amendment at a future date, but an additional $6,000 for Up Yonder Farm to help support those programs at Up Yonder Farm. So.
Okay.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a committee report, but can I expand on something Supervisor Simpson said?
Of course.
Dr. Seeley and his team at Cornell Cooperative Extension worked really hard on that grant. And I wanted to point out that it not only brings better nutritional habits to the children of the county,
It brings environmental awareness to these children. The National Farm to School Network claims that every dollar invested in farm to school stimulates up to $2.16 in local economic activity. So this is an example of a really, really good grant giving. So thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
Apologize for being tardy. It's my claim to fame. You haven't figured that out yet. Occupancy tax did have a meeting November 20th. We had a short meeting. Started at 10 o'clock and ended afternoon. It was a productive meeting. Some of the results I wasn't real happy with, but at least everybody participated. Treasurer Swan indicated we have 4.25 increase in our occupancy tax over the same period of last year, which is a good thing. Then we went on to discuss distribution of occupancy tax monies and came up with an amount for Lake George, Bolton, Queensbury, Town City of Glens Falls, County Tourism, Convention Event Development, County Event Funding, Convention and Visitors Bureau. These are in your resolution. If anybody would like to discuss them, we'd be happy to do it. We also allocated monies for our major county events. This is part of a new program we started. It seems to be working out well, and went well in the meeting. And then towards the end of the meeting, Supervisor Garrity and Supervisor Simpson made a resolution to revise the numbers of occupancy tax to return to the town of Lake George and Village, Bolton, Queensbury. They reduced them by approximately 10%. And that pretty much covers the meeting. We have resolution 500 and 501 reflecting what we did here with these two items. I hope you'll support them, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I would like to thank Ben for being on the committee and participating. It's been a big help. I would like also to mention that the Lake George Chamber and the Folksville sponsored the Chris Tyndall Mart at the Wood Park on December 21st. No, December 7th. It was a great event. The mayor and I went, had a ribbon cutting. They had a big tent and a smaller tent. They had entertainment. They had food, and they had vendors there. It was very well done. The tents are heated, which made it really nice. And they had some really good vendors there. They had exceptional turnout. They had 4,800 people come through in the 2.5 days they had it there. I anticipate next year it'll be bigger, faster, and stronger. The tents are very expensive. They had no idea how many people were going to show up. They opted for the tent size that they got. They really need to expand that because it was really, really successful. The whole event did really well. I have one other announcement I'd like to make, and I'm going to prelude that with a little story. Bear with me. We recently had a major fundraiser in Lake George. It's a local fundraiser, and it's a really good one. It's 30-some years, and it's been around, and I always go. And I went this year. It's an election year, so I was making the rounds to all the local people here, glad handing people and saying hello to everybody. And at one point in time, I spied somebody I hadn't said hello to, and I went over to her and gave her the obligatory hug, and I stepped back and I said, "Happy birthday!" And immediately felt like an idiot, you know. So I stood there red-faced, my mouth hanging open, and she said, "Well, thank you very much. How'd you know it was my birthday?" Next, well, I'm the supervisor. We need to know these things. So with that, I'll say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. If you have a birthday, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. You never disappoint.
Right.
Supervisor Merlino.
And I have to follow it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism did not meet in December. We finished up on our commercials and some of the activity going on for the beginning of 2019. You all got a copy of the new tourism guide. It's a real nice piece. They worked hard on it. If anybody needs some for their towns, come down and see us, and we've got boxes full. And I'll only make one comment because I still believe the treasurer should report when he sends out our reports. It's always numbers, 4.5%, 3.5%. But I'm a firm believer of letting the people know what that means in dollars and cents. And with the latest thing from the treasurer at 5.4% increase over last year of sales tax, approximately $38 million had to be spent in our county to get that number. So that's what makes it more, you know, eye-opening than just saying 5.4%. And same with the op tax, which is up $161,000. You have to spend $4 million in our hotels, motels, and bed and breakfasts as any place that collects the op tax. So with those numbers, it makes it, you know, more exciting and more that we're doing the job than listening to 4% or 5%. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Merlino. Supervisor Strauss.
Yes, I have no committee report. However, I got a couple other things. I want to reinforce what Supervisor Dickinson said, that the Chris Prindle Mart at the Lake George Wood Park in Luffin Lake George was more of a regional event. At the ribbon cutting, it wasn't just you and Bob Blaze. It was Gene was there, Ben was there, Mike was there, I was there. It was a regional event. But again, the thanks really needs to go to the Lake George Chamber of Commerce and the Adirondack Folk School. I know that Gina Mitzner and Kristen Hannafin and the board of directors, Gary Thornquist is here, worked very hard to make this a successful event, and it was. And I think they had an attendance that was 3,500 or something like that. 4,800. So that first year event was a huge success, so congratulations to everybody involved in that. I just want to add, I don't know if this is appropriate time, but Queensbury shares our local municipalities' issues and concerns with carcinogens that may be exhumed in the air and may affect human beings and animals. We share those concerns. So I just wanted to note that. And when it comes time, I do have some thoughts I'm going to share with resolutions 483 and 492. But that's it for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Strauss. Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. In order to be brief, I'd just like to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and also to send my appreciation to this board for letting me as a rookie come on and shake things up occasionally from time to time. But I do appreciate all the support that I've gotten from this board and the leadership of the committees. And again, I wish everyone a happy holiday. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Wild. Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mr. Diamond. I was able to chair the county facilities meeting, one of the meetings in December. He's already gone over some of the resolutions. One of the resolutions, though, that I'm very pleased with is the resolution concerning Skimmerhorn business and being the obviously the FBO out at the airport. I want to thank Mr. McDivitt personally and Mr. Sokol. They were very instrumental in getting the best deal for the county and still having
what I consider the premier FBO probably in the state. I did some research, and I don't think there's a nicer airport in the state in conjunction with a county and an FBO. So it was a win-win for both the county and Mr. Skimmerhorn and the county residents, and that's the most important thing. So again, thank you, Mr. McDevitt and Mr. Sokol, for doing a great job on the negotiating team. I'd also like to thank Mr. Moore for being instrumental in trying to alleviate some of the major issues we've had at the Cedars home. For those of you who don't know, Cedars is a home that services 75,000 meals a year out of the Cedars, and services a majority of Queensbury and Glens Falls residents. It is 60-something% of all the meals in the county. And we've had some challenges there. We've had an open position of the kitchen manager, which is, I believe, vital to the success of that Cedars home and the seniors. And I want to thank Mr. Moore for being instrumental in making sure that we now have an ad running to fulfill this vital position and ensure that our seniors will get the proper attention that they deserve. And just two other quick notes. I'd like to thank Gene Merlino in tourism. The fact that we are up 4.5% in tourism, again, the numbers speak louder than the actual percentages, Gene. But I think this reflects an excellent job on not only the part of the private industry that we did hire, but more importantly, our county tourism department. If you look around the state, tourism hasn't gone up in many counties, but it is going up in Warren County. And that's because of a collective effort of many in this room, but more importantly, putting the right people in the right positions. And I think Joanne Conley is doing a magnificent job, and her team, and Peter Gerard and so forth. There's a number of individuals in that department. But when we see success like this, that leads obviously to additional sales tax revenue, which obviously everyone in this room benefits from. So that's a huge ripple effect that I think sometimes we overlook. And then finally, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for making a priority of the sales tax redistribution formula to the towns. I'd like to thank Gene again, because 3 years ago he said, hey, this just isn't fair. And, you know, I looked at it, but I wasn't as knowledgeable on that subject as I am today. I'm still not an expert. I don't think anybody is in this room, but we're going to learn. We're going to have a full vetting. And Mr. Garrity 2 months ago obviously felt the exact same way as you did, Gene, as he said it's very unfair to his Warren County residents, blatantly unfair. So I'm glad we're going to finally get this on the table, and we're going to talk. We're all going to hear from everybody, and we're going to see actual numbers and actual positions. And when it helps 80% of the county, I think that's significant. I think that's really significant when 80% of the county will see a benefit. So I look forward to that, and thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think you said within 1 or 2 weeks of after the organizational meeting, we'll have this workshop started, and I'm in 100% agreement that needs to be started ASAP. So everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all the other good things that may come from this holiday season. And I appreciate working with everybody on this board. And let's see where we go in 2019 for even a better year. Thank you.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't share a committee, but I do attend as many as I can. First of all, I would like to say to every board member and the employees and everyone, I want to thank you for all the help you have given me and advice and kind of tucking me under your wing, bringing me along in my first year as being an at-large supervisor, and hopefully many to come. It's been quite an eventful year for me, and learning. It's been a huge learning curve, and thank you all for all you've done to help me. Furthermore, I'd like to thank Peter McDivitt and Claudia Bramer, and also I'm glad you brought it up, John, for what's going on down here at the cement. I have, slowly been following it, but after reading this morning, it really raised some really quick concerns of the numbers in that, and really at the rate that it seems to be moving, fast and with the DEC. And I think since we're at the foothills of the Adirondacks, my main concern is, yes, that they say the numbers are low and everything, but my other main concern is a lot of other industries around there that have the smokestacks, that if everybody has these low emissions and we have all these emissions going up, what happens when they all join up in the sky? Do these little low emissions become larger? These are what we have to know. I know that, the smells through the air around, the outskirts of Queensbury and Glens Falls. So I think this is something I think the county needs to also address, as we are such a great team. I also want to, Dr. Sidik, congratulate you on the hard work, and I have enjoyed the board meetings and all you've done, and I stand behind the Cornell, and thank you for all your help, and everyone that works underneath you. And I just want to everybody enjoy have a joyous holiday and family-oriented occasion. And thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor McGowan. Report of the County Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As always, it's my privilege to recognize two individuals who celebrated significant employment milestones this month. Teresa Coate in Public Health has been with the county for 25 years, and Joseph Abrahams in DPW has been with us for 20. Congratulations to both of you. Many thanks for your hard work and dedication. I'll give a brief summary of my meetings. Most of what the chairman mentioned is on my list, so I'll cut it short. Wednesday, November 28th, I held a conference call with the public defender, the assigned council administrator, and New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services to finalize the county's year one submission for its 5-year Harrell Herring implementation plan. We're waiting to hear back from the office as to the work that we've laid out and what they're willing to support and what they want us to change. That same afternoon, I met with Supervisor Garrity, staff from DPW, and the Planning Department to pull together the final steps associated with the Warrensburg Sewer Project. And I'm pleased to report that the county was able to expend almost 100% of the federal community development block grant funding that we received for this project, and that much of the costs incurred by the town of Warrensburg and the county will be fully reimbursed, and that the project is expected to end under budget, which will allow the county to save some of the $300,000 that we initially earmarked for this. All good news. Tuesday, December 11th, I met with the Planning Department staff and their new liaison at the Department of State. We discussed the First Wilderness Program primarily, just to get the new representative familiar with what we're doing. And DOS continues to be a good partner in this project and the others that they help the county and the towns with. There are two resolutions today that will require amendments from the floor. The first, Resolution 478, is the agreement authorizing a contract with CNS Engineers for Environmental Assessment Phase 4 and preliminary design for the runway extension project at the airport. In accordance with the wishes of county supervisors, the administration, and the DPW and airport administration, there will be a provision added to this contract stating that work will be authorized by the county in a phased approach, so that in the event the FAA approves the runway extension alternative that Mr. DeGraw has presented, we can ensure that unnecessary work related to the initial and more costly runway extension is not conducted. In order to memorialize this, in Resolution 478, Supervisor Bramer has drafted this amendment, which consists of an additional whereas paragraph and an additional resolve paragraph that she will offer for your approval with permission of the chair.
Absolutely. Supervisor Bramer.
Yes, thank you. As we discussed in the finance meeting, there was some concern about CNS getting out ahead of us doing work for what I'm calling the current proposal, which is the full runway extension. And we don't want them to get out ahead of us because I think it's very important that we take a serious look at the new alternative that Mr. DeGraw brought forward, where we have a runway extension but we do not have to incur all of the expenses and environmental impact of doing everything that would be required to have that extension used for landings. If it's only used for takeoff, the extra 1,000 feet can still be there, but we do not have to go through with the entire package of changes. So my concern was that CNS would start doing the engineering and design work and incur that cost when we do not want to go down that route, is what I'm thinking. And even if we did want to go down that route, let's just at least take our time and make sure that's what we want to do. So we're asking in the CNS contract that they, pause, come back to the committee each time and get our input and approval, where that was not happening before. So this resolution, and I think even Supervisor Simpson seconded that and was on board with that. So I think this is a good approach for the entire county, and I ask for you to approve this proposed amendment for 478.
Sure, we'll consider that a motion, a second by Supervisor Simpson. Any further discussion? Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said they were going to come back, Claudia, for which my committee, or to which committee will that be?
I believe it is not going to you. It would go to facilities. Yeah, where we have been reviewing it.
Okay.
But we did talk about this in facilities a little bit. I'm on finance, which was when we brought that up more formally. But this is saying it would go back to facilities.
Anyone's free to bring up questions when we deal with resolutions on 478 or any other resolution as well. But on the proposed amendment, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Second resolution to be amended is Resolution 533, which introduces a local law to reinstate the county's expired mortgage recording tax contingent upon the state's approval. The county attorney and I have discussed this item in detail with technical staff from the state Senate and the state Assembly, who advise us that we ought to change the earliest effective date from March 1st to February 1st. That's, I believe, 3 instances in the local law that you have in front of you. That's because there's a slight possibility that the state will be in a position to renew this law effective February 1st. So we just want to be prepared for that in the unlikely event that it does happen. Again, with permission of the chairman, this amendment can be moved and voted upon.
Motion to Mr. Sokol, Mr. Merlino on the second. Any further questions or discussion? There being none, I'll be ready for the question. All those in favor of the proposed amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
There are 2 additions to today's budget resolutions, 463 and 464. They're year-end cleanup items identified by the Treasurer's Office. They've been approved by the chairs of the Criminal Justice and the Finance Committees, and they do not require formal amendments in consistent with past practices of this board for year-end cleanup. Resolution 463 now includes an additional transfer of $24,560.50 from the sheriff's law enforcement budget to the sheriff's school resource officer budget. These funds are for a portion of the $60,000 school resource officer contract with Hadley Luzerne School. Back in September, the board approved a resolution placing these funds in the sheriff's budget, and subsequently the treasurer's office created special account codes so they can better track the expenses on these school resource officer programs. So this simply transfers those funds into the correct accounts. And Resolution 464 has been edited also in the Sheriff's Department to include 2 budget amendments, adding expenses and equivalent reimbursement revenues for the SRO programs in Bolton and in Hadley Luzerne. And finally, I'd like to address the process for selecting a chairman of the board at next month's organizational meeting, because many people have been asking about the laws and the rules that govern this process. State law, to be specific, County Law Section 151, provides that the Board of Supervisors shall meet on or before January 8th for the purpose of organizing the board and selecting a chair. The law further provides that if the Board of Supervisors fails to select a chair on or before February 1st, the county clerk shall appoint a member of the Board of Supervisors as chair, who shall serve as chair until the end of the calendar year. In the event that the Board of Supervisors is not successful at electing a chair at the organizational meeting, state law, to be specific, Public Officers Law Section 5, provides that the chairmanship is officially vacant, but that the preceding chair, in this case Chairman Conover, shall continue to discharge the duties of the office until the office is legally filled. And again, that can happen in one of two ways. Either the board approves a new chairman, or the time runs out and the county clerk selects the chairman on after February 1st. Within the process dictated by state law, the rules of the Board of Supervisors spell out in further detail the process that this county uses to select a chair. And our rules state that the clerk of the board calls the organizational meeting to order, establishes a quorum, and then the Board of Supervisors elects a chair. Our rules stipulate that a chair can only be elected by a majority of the total weighted voting power of the entire board. In other words, that's 501 weighted votes. Now, in the past, a temporary chair has presided over the process of calling for nominations for chair and also calling for the vote for chair. This custom is not officially included in the rules of the board, and therefore this year, at the request of both Chairman Conover and Supervisor Beatty, the clerk of the board will be calling for nominations and calling for the vote. Nominations for chair, for everyone's information, do not require a second. They also do not require discussion. Whoever is nominated for chair at the organizational meeting will be included in this voting. And unless there are other questions on the process I've laid out, this concludes my report. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you very much. Report of the county attorney.
Yes, I have a very short report. I just wanted to share some good news with the board. My second assistant county attorney was admitted early by the 3rd Department on December 5th, 2018. So we are fully up and running in my office, finally. I also want to direct your attention to resolution number 515. When we brought this resolution request through committee, we had not opened the bids yet. Bids were opened on November 29th, and we awarded the bid to Independent Title Agency, and this is for the abstract work needed to complete the foreclosure process. And finally, I just want to wish everyone a happy holidays.
Thank you. Reading of communications.
Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. Financial Report dated August 31, 2018 and September 30, 2018. Minutes from the Warren Washington County CDC from their November 14th meetings and from the IDA from the November 14th and 19th meetings. We received a letter from Ann D. Murray, Warren County resident, speaking against the proposed ban on plastic bags in Warren County. Letter from Mary Cassane, Warren County attorney, stating the order of succession for authority in her office. We received an October payment in the amount of $3,093 from the Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. Notice of public hearing from the town of Queensbury regarding a change for zoning for property owned by Kabricki and Sons to be held on January 28th at 7 o'clock in the Queensbury Activity Center, and Washington County Board of Supervisors Resolution numbers 297 and 298 of 2018, approving an MOU and the 2019 budget for the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board.
Reading of resolutions.
Proposed resolution numbers 463 through 544 were mailed to the board and posted to the county website. Proposed resolutions 463 and 464 were amended after mailing. Those are the ones that Mr. Moore just spoke about. The revised resolutions were emailed to you and posted to the county website. Copies are on your desk. We do need a motion to approve the revisions to resolutions 463 and 464 as provided.
Motion, Mr. Simpson, Mr. Merlino on the second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolutions 545 through 547 were produced after the resolutions were mailed pursuant to the Public Works Committee meeting held on December 17th. The resolutions were emailed to the board and posted to the county website, and copies are on your desk. Motion is needed to bring 545 through 547 to the floor.
Motion by Mr. Dickinson, second by Mr. Stroud. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
One last note, as the chairman mentioned, Resolution 482 on your index is not marked as a roll call vote, but it will be.
Thank you. Good. And now I'll open the floor up to anyone in the audience wishing to address the board regarding any of the resolutions presently before us. There being no one, I'll now open up to the board itself regarding our discussion on resolutions. First, I'll ask for roll call, if I might. Mr. Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 477, please.
477, request for roll call. Very good. Any other roll call requests? Mr. Stroud.
483 and 492.
483, 492. Any other roll call requests? There being none, I'll now open up the floor to the Board of Supervisors regarding any discussion regarding any resolutions presently before us. Mr. Stroud.
Yes, I have two, but I will speak to them in the order in which you want me to, Mr. Chairman.
Let's take them one at a time.
First, numerical order will be 483, and I too want to applaud Mr. Wild for all the work he's doing here. I think it makes arrive at a very good place at a future time. Although this resolution, which is declaring the properties, the lands owned by the county at River Street, also known as the Sipagagi site, and it talks to tax map parcel 303.20-2-48 is no longer necessary for public use. I think it's premature for us to consider this resolution, and I want to state the reasons why. Resolution 483 reads, resolve the county property located at River Street in the town of Queensbury, New York, tax map parcel number 303.20-2-48 is no longer necessary for public use. That is not accurate. The lot is 14.8 acres. I'm not aware of any subdivision that has legally been created to this date. I don't know how it would be subdivided. I don't know the metes and bounds. I don't know how that would affect other things that I'm going to talk about in a minute. All right, but again, declaring that this lot of 14.8 acres is parcel 303.20-2-48, 14.8 acres is used by the county. Therefore, claiming that this parcel is no longer necessary for public use is not accurate. Building number 2, 807 square feet, is used by the Warren County DPW Highway Department specifically for vehicle and equipment storage. Building number 1, 25,200 square feet, part of which of this building is used by the county's Emergency Services Department for vehicle and equipment storage. And parts of the open lots surrounding those buildings are sometimes used by Warren County DPW especially. So saying that we're not using it is simply not true. We are using it. Declaring it surplus is simply not true. It's not surplus. We are using it. All right, furthermore, this lot has an encumbered history, and I don't think we've properly addressed it. The deed restrictions and even a county resolution acknowledging those deed restrictions needs to be addressed. I mentioned, and I've shared it with many others, the 24-page of easement restrictions. 24 pages. That pertains to this parcel. Where are those easements? We don't know. How are you going to subdivide this? We don't know. What parts are you going to subdivide to sell? We don't know. Are we using it for the county? Yes, we are. So how can we declare this surplus? So I have not seen any document showing or describing those encumbrances and how they impact the county and any potential buyer for this property. My other concern, this parcel is assessed at a full market value of $2.9 million. In the interest of assuring transparency and due diligence and not appearing arbitrary and capricious, I would ask the county to have an independent appraisal done on this property. But first of all, I guess we have to subdivide it. Then, before we subdivide it, we better take a look and see where the easements are and see where this 10-acre or 8-acre or 7-acre, we don't really know. The 10.3 was kind of picked out arbitrarily. and it includes a 25,200 square foot building. Now, if you were to build that 25,200 square foot building today, it would cost you in the millions. Also, and this has been shared with certain people at the county, BASF's Wayne Sinclair sent an email to Queensbury Town Planner Stu Baker on December 11, 2018, expressing an interest in this property's potential sale, and added that BASF is always interested due to our entrenched knowledge of other parcel conditions. So the bottom line is a lot more homework needs to be done before this Board of Supervisors can make a reasoned decision on this property. So I just think it's a little premature that we're putting this out there for the Board of Supervisors to consider to be surplus property.
Thank you, Supervisor Strauss. Supervisor Dickinson.
Are you asking that?
Well, I think the most efficient way would be to have this tabled, yes. I've also asked for roll call because if it doesn't get tabled, it certainly should go to roll call.
Well, let me suggest this, as there might be people that want to speak to this matter. I'll come back to you if you wish to table. If we could have some discussion on this first before we go to that motion. I can't keep you from making the motion. I just want that clear. If you make the motion to table now, it takes precedent, and we will have to deal with it immediately.
Understood.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
D.L. Dickinson Associates, Land Surveyors, Engineers, Lake George, New York, 668-4676. Glad to help you out.
You never disappoint, I'll tell you. It's amazing. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to Resolution 483 at this time? Supervisor McDevitt.
I would agree with John. It just seems like there's some homework to be done here, and if we're going to do this, let's just make sure we do it the right way. So I think he's brought up some legitimate concerns.
Further discussion?
Yes.
Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I always enjoy the right process being held, and Supervisor Strauss has pointed out we're looking to declare an unsubdivided parcel to be surplus. So we have not gone through a subdivision process. We have not gone through all the proper channels of being able to distinctly say that this parcel is now surplus. It's not been separated from what we do use with the county DPW. I do not think it has also gone through full vetting on are there alternative uses for this parcel besides being sold. Supervisor Stroud pointed out that on the county roll, this is a $2.2 million parcel. There was discussion in committee that this be sold for around $400,000. There's a big discrepancy there in value, and I think that needs to be established of why there is such a discrepancy, and is it in the best interest of the county with those values.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for the county attorney. The process for subdividing the lot, that would occur through the town of Queensbury, correct?
Correct.
So that seems to be a critical issue to Supervisor Stroud, that he hasn't seen a subdivided plan. But don't we need Queensbury to review and subdivide that?
I believe we would submit a plan to Queensbury, and then they would approve it or not approve it.
So the next step would then is submit a plan to the town of Queensbury to approve. I mean, he brings up the fact that he hasn't seen it. Well, we need to have the town of Queensbury act on that in order to have a subdivision plan to review. So can we based on a contingency, ask the town of Queensbury to come back to the subdivision of that particular property, so we know where the boundaries are, so we can choose to advance that.
DPW would have to create a plan to subdivide it, and then we would have to submit that plan.
And I thought we had that discussion, but maybe we didn't?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, as far as environmental issues, we had some contingencies that we discussed at the workshop that protected the county's interest in regards to environmental issues. It also needs to be approved, the sale of the property, if we choose to do that, be approved by the former owners of the property, along with state and federal agencies too, or just the previous owners?
I don't believe the
Okay.
state or federal agencies know.
Supervisor Garrity.
I'll make the motion to table this.
We have a motion to table. A motion to table takes precedent. Mr. Stroud, you second the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Stroud seconds the motion. All discussion is ended. We'll try a show of hands first. All those in favor of the table to the motion to table signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Okay, it's tabled. That goes back to committee. Commissioner Hajos is here, and he knows the he knows what he needs to develop. Thank you. 483 is now tabled. Discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Stroud.
I guess John is deferring to me, I believe. I think that's...
Are you relinquishing the floor, Supervisor Stroud?
I can be patient and save my conversation on Resolution 492 till...
Very good. Supervisor McDevitt.
492, a couple of issues as it relates to providing health care at our correctional facility. An RFP. When is the last time an RFP has been sent out to ensure that we're getting a competitive arrangement as it relates to mental health and health issues as it relates to our correctional facility? So I think it's appropriate in today's day and age that indeed occur. In addition to that, I don't know how, if anyone else has taken the time to Google correctional medical care. Correctional medical care has a serious history of legal issues with various counties in the state of New York. I Googled correctional this morning and discovered a couple of things. They were involved in a 1.1 million payment to an inmate in Albany County. They were involved in a serious death of an inmate in Schenectady County. So I think there are some serious issues being raised. I would like to suggest that at the end of the day, it's really preferable that we deal with local providers. Hudson Headwaters, a local provider. Why don't we deal with the medical community that we know, that we trust, that are our friends and our neighbors, and indeed we have a more trustworthy relationship. John, I don't know if you want to add.
Supervisor Stroud?
Yes, I did do that Google research this morning, and I found several things. Here's an article titled "Lawsuit Alleges Falsified Medical Records at Broome County Jail," dated April 25th, 2018, this year. Broome County. A lawsuit alleges inmate medical records were falsified so that the Broome County Jail would pass accreditation. The complaint was filed on Monday against Correctional Medical Care, the company contracted by Broome County Jail. 3 women formerly employed by the company say their supervisor asked them to change the dates on the medical records to make it appear that sick or injured inmates were seen to be more quickly than they were. All 3 women say they were either fired or forced to resign when they refused to do as asked by Correctional Medical Care. Another article that came my way came from Ithaca.com, dated January 4th, 2016. If you've been paying attention to the news in upstate New York over the past few years, you may have noticed that the name Correctional Medical Care popping up repeatedly and not for positive reasons. The Pennsylvania-based company, which as of last year was charged with overseeing inmate care for 13 upstate county jails, has been sued a number of times for neglecting to provide adequate medical attention. And now, despite the concerns of at least one legislator at a meeting in November, the Tioga County legislator renewed his contract. In September 2014, CMC, Correctional Medical Care, agreed to pay $100,000 in restitution to the county and another $100,000 in civil penalties to the state as a result of an investigation prompted by the death of 6 inmates in jails in Tioga County between 2009 and 2012. The investigation, which began when New York State Commission of Correction referred the matter to Attorney General, determined that CMC has chronically understaffed facilities and replaced hours worked by physicians and dentists with hours worked by less qualified, lower paid staff members. Some staff members were licensed and inexperienced, and one nurse had a felony conviction. The Office of Attorney General also found that CMC had violated state law prohibiting the corporate practices of medicine. The Commission of Correction and Medical Review Board have consistently raised serious concerns about the medical care provided by correctional medical care and has documented those concerns in reports issued a result of its investigations into deaths at several CMC-served facilities. Lawsuits continue to be filed against this medical care provider. Recently, CMC was ordered by the U.S. District Court to pay $425,000 to the estate of Nicole Carmen for gross misconduct that led to the woman's death in April of 2013. Another federal lawsuit filed late this year alleges similar negligence. Mark Cannon Jr., 24, died in August of 2014 at the hospital after he had a stroke at the Albany County Jail. CMC staff failed to recognize the severity of the symptoms. Another article came out of WNYT Channel 13 July 24th of 2017. It referenced to Albany County Jail inmate Mark Cannon. And then Bob Keach, he's the attorney representing Cannon's family. He said the nurses are employed by Correctional Medicare, a private company the DL outsources its medical services to. A nurse is not qualified to do a diagnosis, Keach said. So Keach has filed wrongful death suit as well as federal civil rights lawsuits against correctional medical care. Also, Albany County Sheriff Craig Apple tells News Channel 13 the jail no longer uses correctional medical care for its medical services. January 10th, 2017, an article titled Correctional Medical Care Pays $425,000 Settlement in Prisoners' Opiate Withdrawal Death. Correctional Medical Care agreed to a $425,000 settlement in a lawsuit alleging the company's practice of putting profit before patient care resulted in the opiate withdrawal death of a prisoner at New York's Schenectady County Jail. I could go on. Out of the Daily Gazette, August 2nd, 2018, Schenectady County and former medical contractor for the county jail are being sued in federal court over the 2015 death of Terrence Duncan. Defendants in the civil case include Correctional Medical Care and others. Also, from the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General of New York State, Attorney General Schneiderman, announced a settlement with healthcare company that provided substandard service to jail inmates in 13 New York counties. Correctional Medical Care, a Pennsylvania-based non-for-profit, okay, and I'm going to skip a few things, violated key provisions of its contract with 2 counties, Monroe and Tioga. Correctional Medical Care understaffed facilities shifted work hours from physicians and dentists to less qualified and lower wage staff, including in one case, a nurse with felony conviction. The Attorney General's office went on to say tax dollars meant to cover medical care of our county prisoners must not be wasted, and substandard care and mismanagement are not an option, Attorney General Schneiderman said. According to New York State Assembly Health Committee Chairman Richard Godfrey, this is a clear example of the dangers of business corporations providing health care. Commissioner Phyllis Harris Ross, MD, chair of the Commission's Medical Review Board, said that they have consistently raised serious concerns about the medical care provided by correctional medical care and have documented those concerns in reports issued as a result of investigation of death at CMC served facilities. And it goes on, it talks about other prisoners who died between 2009 and 2012 at 5 county jails who had contracted with CMC. Sofa Elia, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, executive director of the Correctional Association of New York, said, given the extensive health care needs of people incarcerated in New York County jails, it is crucial for them to receive quality medical and mental health services. And folks, that was just the Google search this morning.
So what's your point?
My point is,
you wait for this one?
We have a resolution before us, appointing a correctional medical care to provide the services for our inmates at Warren County Jail. And so I'm just thinking, I'm not prepared to say yes to this.
I would suggest the following: should a motion to table be launched here, that it be followed by a waiving of the rules, and that a resolution authorizing the county administrator, the sheriff, and the treasurer to take such actions administratively as are necessary to make sure there's no interruption in these services while this matter is being dealt with by the board. That way we don't have a void in service, and that we ensure that our liabilities are, if any, are maintained at a minimum. So that would be the recommendation. We don't have to do it this way, but my recommendation would be that if there's a motion to table, if it is successful, since these services would cease, on what date would these services cease?
The contract that we have right now with CMC ends at the end of the year.
Okay, so I would recommend that it be immediately followed, since it would be a new resolution with a waiving of the rules that will require a 2/3 vote, and that be followed by a resolution that instructs the sheriff, the treasurer, and the county administrator to take such actions as are necessary to ensure that there's no interruption of service. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Garrity.
Well, I have a question for the chairman of the Sheriff's Communications. This was put out for RFP, right?
We did have 4 respondents to a quote. I'll turn it over to the administrator, has a better handle on.
Because it's a medical contract, there's not a requirement for an RFP in the law, but the sheriff did go out and work this year for several months obtaining quotes and working with other providers of this service to see what else was out there. We got 3 quotes back, one from CMC, one from Correct Care Solutions, which handles the Westchester Jail, is very good, another from the group that handles the Albany County Jail. The other 2 quotes were more expensive than the CMC quote, and if you recall, during the budget process, the new contract with CMC added, I believe, over $300,000 into the jail budget, and was somewhat controversial and was discussed during the budget process, and was approved in the adopted budget for 2019.
And the next bidder was substantially more?
The next bidder, I believe, was about $100,000 more. That was the Westchester group, and the Albany group was substantially more.
But again, I would say to the board that perhaps the existing provider would provide at least on a month-to-month until we vet this issue fully in committee, and that way we make sure that we do not have an absence of service to people that really need these services. But that's just a suggestion going forward. Craig, you chair the committee. I'll refer to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Supervisor Stroud-McDivitt for bringing this to our attention, and things that do get brought up to our attention at these meetings. It is hard to handle these with all the facts. As I said before, I rely a lot on procedure of things. Would like to point out that the lawsuits that jail faces for medical practices is very common, as the county attorney has reported in committee before when asked about the lawsuits that the county faces. We get a lot out of the jail, the nature of the business. So, and also just thinking along the lines of malpractice suits that are done and are awarded. So it's very disturbing to hear that there's so many lawsuits brought before this contractor. For sure, it requires a little looking into. I do not think we should be able to put this into context on, is this unusual for any contractor that handles jail health services. Also, as far in regards to the staffing, our budget and the sheriff office worked very hard on this to be able to keep this $1.755 million annual contract down to this degree by having people less than a doctor be there to cover a lot of the time. Otherwise, it would be very cost prohibitive. There was a change on the medical staff in this contract, and we're hiring 3.6 LPNs to accommodate the workload here for this county. So we are working to make sure that there is adequate staffing at our jail under this contract. If the supervisors would like to table this, I think it would be appropriate to look at these accusations, see if we do have a good contractor. The county does not want to be in a position of knowingly going forward.
Would you like to make that a motion?
I would have somebody else do that.
Somebody else? Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Prior to tabling, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I have two questions, hopefully, that can be answered today. In these lawsuits, who had to pay the damages? Was it the county or was it the CMC? And I'm wondering in the past if we've ever had any issues specifically related to CMC care. And the reason why I ask this is that when you think about a larger business, there are procedures and directives that are driven from the very highest level down. But you also have local control and local decisions that are being made. So I'm wondering if these instances were somewhat related to local management decisions versus corporate decisions. And that's the basis for my questions about whether we've had any issues prior.
I think those and perhaps others would be the kind of questions that could be asked and vetted in the calm of a committee structure within that process, if that's the pleasure of the board. I'm not looking to lead the board here. I'm just trying to articulate the different options here at this time. And so I guess I would ask, what is the pleasure of the board?
I would make a motion that we table it, and we take the chairman's direction in terms of ensuring that the contract continues. In Googling this organization, that's what they've done in other locations, okay? They have been sued, they've been in litigation, and what they've done is they've just extended the contract until the issues are resolved. So it seems like we have to do some due diligence in an effort to ensure that we're not creating a libelous situation for Warren County.
Well, discussion, a motion to table takes precedent. Discussion ends. I see Supervisor Bramer's hand in the air. Are you a second on this, Supervisor Bramer?
Well, I just want to say that I did review the quotes, but I would be concerned if we're not in compliance. So I second the table to motion, and I won't get
Okay.
into further comments.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion to table. We have a second on the motion to table. Let's try it this way at first. All those in favor of the motion to table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One no. The motion is carried. The chair will entertain, I hope, a motion to waive the rules to consider authorizing staff to take such actions as are necessary. Supervisor Loeb, Supervisor Dickinson on a motion to waive the rules. All those in favor of waiving the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The rules are waived. The chair will entertain a motion to authorize staff as previously discussed. Supervisor Leggett, Supervisor Bramer, is that the second? Supervisor Bramer on the second. Is there discussion on the motion? Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The only reason for my vote no was to wonder whether there's a provision in our existing contract to be able to extend it. And if there's not, then we may be without coverage for another month.
I asked that question of the attorney while the discussion was going on. Perhaps you'd like to respond.
This past year was our last extension under the contract.
So
there are
there's-
no
So
further-
in effect, we could, by tabling this motion and going forward with this, end up not having coverage in the jail for the month of January and maybe longer.
Well, that's why I think we have the authorization of staff and the treasurer to do whatever is necessary to ensure that that does not happen. But can I give you 100% surety on that? I don't think anyone can. But I think we're taking such action as we can take. So we now have a motion to authorize the treasurer, the county administrator, and the sheriff to take such actions as are necessary while this matter is being dealt with in our committee structure. The county attorney and the treasurer. And treasurer. And the treasurer. The money man. Alrighty. Discussion on the motions.
Just a quick question. Are we going to set any parameters around how much we are willing to pay during this extension? We have no idea what this company is going to charge us. We're at a point where we have exhausted any extensions. I'd like to know what we're going to pay until we work this issue out.
I certainly cannot answer that question at this moment. Supervisor Stroud.
I would suggest that we can start at a monthly, a 1/12 of the contract until we get this resolved.
I think that's, are you offering that as an amendment to the motion?
Yes, I am.
We have Supervisor Stroud offering a financial amendment to the motion, which is to, on a monthly basis, to pay the pro rata amount on the existing contract until such time as we fully vetted this issue. I would assume that that would apply to if we had to bring in another company, that not only to the existing company, should they choose not to extend for any reason, we would have those dollar amounts to be able to offer to a company B.
Yes, I'll agree to that.
You've heard the motion. Is that Supervisor Loeb on the second? Any further discussion? Supervisor Hogan?
I need the record to reflect that I abstained on the motion to table.
Supervisor Hogan, please.
This
So
is going a little fast.
So ordered. So ordered. Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, my question is, if they don't want to, we have to provide medical coverage. So your other option is if they say no, and you have to, I mean, you only have a few days to find somebody. If they say no, are you going to have to board out the full population of your jail without proper medical coverage? That's what you need to find out.
It could get pricey. I think everyone in the room understands that. I hope everyone in the room understands that.
You have to board out 140 inmates at $93 a day until you can get somebody in here to provide coverage. I mean, I think we're jumping a little bit too quick. But,
well, this is what happens when it's in the 11th hour now in terms of the approval, which I'm sure I see Jack nodding his head. That's what we run into on these matters. Supervisor Wild.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering if we could, if there was any clause in the contract that could allow us to terminate for some kind of cause. But that would mean going backward and untabling the motion, so that
That's okay.
The contract itself will, it's a matter of days now of service that the contract itself will run out. But I think that, I hope it's the intent of the board that the people so designated should take any and all actions necessary to ensure that things keep running appropriately. And County Administrator?
I'd just like to say that the jail is a highly regulated environment, regulated by the state of New York. If we don't provide the proper medical care to the inmates, we'll face violations. And with regard to the price that we're willing to pay per month, if we set that price in accordance with the current contract, I would just like the board to be aware that that is a price reflective of staffing levels that are not adequate to service this population. The reason why the price is going up for the proposed 2019 contract is because the staffing matrix for this organization has been updated to reflect the higher jail population. I just feel that's an important point for you all to be aware of.
And my proposal
Supervisor Straw.
of 112 was for the proposed contract, which includes the increase, just to make clear.
Okay. All right, and the second on that was Supervisor Loeb. Was that your understanding as well on the motion? Further discussion? Supervisor Leggett.
11th hour. The Sheriff's Department has done a lot of work to come before the board, before the committee, with a contractor that can provide these services that we do look out for the public as well. But to have these brought up at this point in time with I'll call them allegations. They have paid out on these things, but we do not know the context behind any of these payouts. And have any other contractors in this business have had similar costs as well?
I understand your point. It's very difficult at this moment in time as a legislative body to be dealing with these types of issues. But I think though that the proposal, while there are maybe other options, is one of a prudent way to proceed as opposed to.
Right, and our budget has been set upon these contracts as well. Correct. You know, to pull in anybody else, it would require budget amendments and so on and so forth. It gets very, very complicated. And the fact is, our jail has not suffered any of these lawsuits, and these have been contractors for our jail. We have not had complaints that we know of come forward. It's not coming to the public.
We find ourselves, the existing resolution has been tabled. There's been a waiving of the rules. There's been at least an interim solution offered. Are we ready for the question?
Well, no, I have more.
Supervisor Garrity.
What happens if they turn us down? That's my question. What do you do if they turn us down? You set a parameter, say we'll pay you X number of dollars to extend the contract. What if they say no? And then you have a jail population that we may be in violation of rules and regulations. That's all I'm concerned about. If we give the small committee permission to find a provider to go, don't put set parameters on there to let them do the best for at least 30 or 60 days. You bet it. I can vote for that, but I can't vote for saying hire this guy at X number of dollars. What if he says no? What if he says I'm concerned? Now they may not, because I guess the contract is pretty large. That's all I'm concerned about. And then we put the jail, we put the correction facility in limbo, and we might be putting ourselves in limbo for liability issues for not providing service. I think we need to give that group, the committee, a little more leeway to do what's best for the county for a short period of time, whether it be 30 days, 60 days, but just to say, see if these people want to work for you for 1/12 of the new contract. And I know it sounds crazy, but it could happen to us. And then if you have to board out the population, you're looking at quite a bit of money. And I don't know what the Commissioner of Corrections would do to it.
Well, in some bidding processes, if you just qualify a bidder, you move to the next bidder or you rebid.
The only other thing...
The next bidder would be more.
The only other thing I would say is this was vetted in committee. The undersheriff explained the process. And, you know, I remember when we changed to this company from Hudson Headwaters because they didn't want to provide the same coverage, is what we were getting for this company. But, you know, there's a little bit more to it than just saying, I think we need to give the committee of three a little more leeway. That's all I'm saying is not cool.
Mr. Chairman.
I would think that's a reasonable request, but Supervisor Strauss?
You know, two things. First one, the way you worded it, Chairman Conover, was that that group that you listed would have any power that is practicable to carry on what medical services the county sheriff's office needs. You, that group, while you're investigating the matter, do have that power. You already gave it to yourself in the resolution. The second point I'd like to make out is that now that everyone's a little bit more aware of this organization's history, we too could open ourselves to liability by continuing service with them, knowing the history. So I would be a little bit cognizant of that fact as well.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to point out that this contract is not just for medical services, but it is also for the health and dental and ancillary services as well. The negligent cases were basically around the medical services as their way to parse it out. So, yeah.
All right.
I see the sheriff has just come in as well, so perhaps he could speak with
Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not aware of the how many average suits are brought against the county. Supervisor Stroud read, 5-6 pages of different things happening in different contracts around the state and so forth. But I think it was Mr. Leggett, Supervisor Leggett said, well, is that good, bad? Is that average? That's above average, below average? I don't know. And so that could be above average, could be below average. I guess we don't know that. And I remember being at that committee meeting, and I thought there was a fairly full vetting of the company at your meeting, Mr. Leggett. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm rather confused as to, we're always saying we need to support our department heads and so forth. That's a mantra here on the board. Don't question the department head's decision and so forth. And now here at the 11th hour, we seem to be questioning the department head's decision. Now maybe that's valid. Maybe it isn't. Again, I don't know if the data that Mr. Stroud provided is, that could be a shining star for them. They could be lower than the average across the country. We don't know. So that wasn't given us. We didn't get any balance on that. So it could be terrible. They could be bad. We haven't had problems up here with them. But again, so I am also concerned with Mr. Garrity saying, well, there are significant state laws, and if we can't get them to sign up for another 30 days or 60 days, we're going to be sending these inmates and boarding them in other counties at a significant higher cost. So I'm not sure what the motion is on the floor right now.
The motion is for the treasurer, the sheriff, and the county administrator and the county attorney to take such actions as are necessary to ensure this coverage while this matter is more fully explored in committee.
And
that's the action, and that the amount that they should contract for going forward while we're doing this is on a monthly basis is 1/12 of the proposed contract amount.
And if we can't get them to agree to continue with their services, then
the treasurer, the sheriff, and yourself will then do what?
Then normally what would happen, there's a number of things that could happen. If the existing contractor is disqualified for any reason, you can go to the next bidder. It would be more money. If they were to enter into such arrangement and if it were to exceed the authorization, we could retroactively ratify that decision based upon what was discussed in committee. That we have done that in the past, so it's not like they're totally foreclosed from options going forward. They would have some options going forward, and they could come to committee at that time, and they could say it's not going to cost X, it's going to be X plus Y, and at that time the committee could take such action as to ratify those actions beyond their authorization right now, and that would be completely understandable. We have done that in the past, and the committee could authorize me to, and then they would authorize my ratifying my signature ratifying that event. So we have done these things in the past. So there are options going forward. It's not a dead-end street, but I think the point that was made, and I think the intent of the motion, is to make sure that the sheriff and the county administrator and the treasurer take such actions as are necessary. Mr. Diamond made the point that can we put some dollar amounts to this, and Supervisor Stroud made that as part of his motion. The dollar amount that was entered into, I think I'm reciting this correctly, is 1/12 of the bid price that was proposed. That was seconded on that amendment and was approved, and that's the motion that's in front of us.
Could we hear from the sheriff?
Without objection, absolutely. Sheriff?
Glad to talk to you, but you have to ask me questions because I haven't got a clue what the problem is. From my understanding, Craig, we've gone over this at budget. We've gone over it in committee. I sent the contracts to a lawyer, Claudia, her and Jack looked at it. Nobody had any qualms or concerns then. So I guess I'm a little baffled at what the problem is now.
A number of articles have been introduced that could reflect poorly on this contractor. I'm not saying they do. We don't know. And as a result of that, the board felt that they should revisit the proposal, but in the interim authorize you and others to take such actions as are necessary.
Well, I heard all that, Mr. Chairman. I think if you Google any of the correctional medical people that are out there, you'll find a lot of bad stuff about most of them. When I was going through this contract process, we had 3 companies, and a couple of the other companies were saying, look at all these countrywide lawsuits against Company A and Company B. You're always going to have that with a medical concern, especially dealing in a jail. You're going to have people that aren't happy with their care. You're going to have lawsuits. You're going to have grievances, which we have plenty of grievances. They're all documented. I personally handled all of these grievances. And as far as I know, and Mary will have to jump in, we've been sued a couple of times, but it's never been found. Nothing has ever been found. I guess what surprises me, folks, I'm the elected sheriff of this county. The people have put their trust in me. We went out on a bid process, which was never done before for medical care. Before, it was always Hudson Headwaters, if you recall. They did everything. And when we had a problem 6 years ago, when we needed 24/7 coverage, they didn't want to do it. I was the first sheriff to bring this before a committee and to bring it for a fair contract. Give us the best price. Hudson Headwaters didn't want to do it. Correctional Medical Care was the only one that did it at the time. And since then, there's been other companies come up across the nation that want the business. So I put it out to everybody. So this contract was the cheapest of the other 3, and when you hire a new company, there's always ancillary problems that happen when they bring in their administrative staff. So I felt the fact that these folks were cheaper, we know who we're dealing with. If I have a problem, I make a phone call, they try to correct it. So I don't know why you folks haven't reached out to me if you thought this was problematic. You want to read something on Google, read my name. You want to read a lot of bad stuff, you'll probably find it there. You'll probably find some good stuff. To me, I think you're playing politics with this. People don't like me. So I think it's pretty poor for you to bring it up at the last minute here when you haven't asked me. If you've got a problem, you should ask me. What do you think, Sheriff? Yeah, is there problems in the medical community? You're absolutely right there is. But it's up to your sheriff and his administrative staff to weed that out, and we've been doing it. And you bring this up here for a political reason, and I think it stinks.
All right, let's get this back in order. Questions for the Sheriff, Supervisor Wild?
I have a question for the Sheriff. I agree with him. I do have another comment, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
No, not at all.
I believe, and I'm fully supportive of the process. We've talked about the process before and how we go about doing things. You've heard me before say in front of this board that we always bring contracts up at the last minute and leave us no room to consider another problem or another issue. Here again, it's happening. So we've now created ourselves in a box. We've enclosed ourselves in this tiny little box that's just purely our doing, that says we have between now, December 21st, and December 31st, 10 days, with a couple of holidays and weekends in between, to resolve a new contract or a contract extension. That's insane. In addition to that, we've placed a dollar limit in terms of what we ask this group to do. That's also making that box even tighter around us. So my proposal is that we take that limitation out of the 1/12 and use it as a guide, but not as a limitation. Because if we don't get coverage, we're now exposed to, as was mentioned before, fines and extensive liability.
The suggestion, Supervisor Stroud, was that be monetary be used as a guide as opposed to a hard number. Are you interested in changing your motion in that regard?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
That's fine. I believe I'm trying to remember. Supervisor Loeb, is that fine with you?
Yes.
Very good. Any further discussion? Good suggestion. Supervisor Diamond.
Just a comment. I happen to listen to what the sheriff's point, and he's right. We entrust him to make decisions, and you can go to Google and you can call any company, anybody, any individual, and you can always find something that someone's going to criticize you for. He brings to the table the experience necessary that we entrust him with the jail, responsibility of the jail. I'm perfectly comfortable at this point in time after listening to what the sheriff says, to go back and approve that resolution. The other initiatives, questions have been raised about whether, the company has any merits to lawsuits, who's suing them, what are the reasons for that. I'm sure that there's language in the contract that we can get out from underneath if we chose to, if we found that this company was not a quality company. Or you could put provisions in the contract.
We have to deal. I'm sorry, but we have a motion that's on the table presently, that's under discussion presently. I'm not saying we can't discuss or consider other things later, but we have a motion right now to authorize essentially the sheriff to take such actions as are necessary with the support of the treasurer and the county administrator to continue the service until such time as this matter was fully vetted. That's the motion that's in front of us, unless it's withdrawn. And it can only be withdrawn by the people making the motions, Sheriff.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it was more than fully vetted. So with what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, who's now going to fully vet it? I've done it. Who else is going to do it? And I'll tell you what, Mr. Chairman, if people on this board don't like the job that I'm doing, they only got 12 more months. You can run for the position of sheriff and do it yourself. You know, this is ridiculous, folks, playing politics with this issue. I spent the time to send you the contract. You read it over as a lawyer. I just, at the last minute to do this, Mr. Wild makes a good point. You're putting the jail in a precarious situation if we don't have a contract. And to give you something else, just to give you how expensive these things are, we have one inmate in a month. His bill is $85,000. Those are the things I deal with every day. I try to get them out of jail, get them into state prison so it doesn't cost the taxpayers this amount of money. And fortunately, I think we found a way that this $85,000 may be covered by Medicaid because we have a good medical director over there, a nurse who runs it on a day-to-day basis that works for this company. I may not trust everybody that works in the medical community, but I trust my nurse administrator. She knows what she's doing, and she's constantly looking out for the taxpayers. This $85,000 for a month is a lot of money, and I think she found a way that we don't have to pay it. So those are things I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So, and I've said to this board for the last 11 years as sheriff, if you've got a question, you don't understand something, call me. Whether you like me or whether I like you is not important. I can put that aside. I'll answer you honestly. And if I haven't answered anybody here honestly, you let me know. I'll tell you the truth, whether I like you or not. This is not right.
Let's have a little discussion on take such actions as are necessary. That's a very broad thing. Does that also include the sheriff entering into the contract, if that's what's required here? While we're vetting this in committee, that needs to be discussed. I'm sorry, but it does. Supervisor Merlino.
I think I'm under the standing that once you table something and get a second, it's finished. Okay, but I am also under the standing that you can re-bring it up. Somebody else can re-bring it up and move to get back on the floor for a vote. Am I wrong in that?
Well, we'll change the Robert's rules on that.
He's correct.
I believe you're correct.
So,
but the motion that's in front of us presently, which everyone needs to focus on, is
right,
to...
and I'd like to see that one canceled, and I would bring that other one back, that we go ahead and move with this one, listening to the sheriff.
Supervisor Simpson.
Did he make a motion? Did you make
No, he can't have it. We already have a motion on the floor.
You've got to cancel that motion first.
This motion would have to be defeated, and then at which time we could entertain a motion on the original resolution, which was 492. Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resolution and all the prior vetting were done above board, and the resolution was presented in an above board way. Last our concerns were expressed. I don't know if they were politically motivated or not, but they were expressed, and every one of us has an opportunity, an obligation to the people we represent to express our feelings, support or against something. And that's where we are right at this moment. We have members of this board who are not comfortable with what is being presented. Let's set aside the issues the sheriff brings up. There are valid issues. Everything that's been said here is valid. I respect everything that any of the supervisors have said. But at this point in time, we have an issue that is leaving some supervisors uncomfortable. Or at least one supervisor, two supervisors. And I think we need to respect that. And by voting in favor of the resolution that's on the table right now, that gives us the opportunity to address the concerns of those. Maybe just a minority of the board, but I think we should respect that minority's wishes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we need to eventually call the question on this. Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I just have a quick question for the sheriff, if he doesn't mind. But do you think we can extend this contract for a month or so without damaging relationships?
This company is, well, do they want the business? Yes. That was the reasoning for, they were up, this company was upset with me when I told them that we were going to bid it out. And, they wanted, well, what's the matter? It's nothing to do with personality. It has to do with, we want to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck for the people of this county. And if somebody can do the same job that you're doing and save me $500,000, I'd be stupid not to do it. So he was a little offended at first, but he understood it. He wanted the business. He said, okay, I'll sharpen my pencil. That's the way it's supposed to work, ain't it, folks? That's what I did. That's what you elected me to do. I pay taxes in this county as well. So will they? I think the right move is to entrust the sheriff what we went through budget and we went through committee. Yeah. And which the lawyer looked at. I think we need to do that. I think that's the fair thing to do. You vote in any other way, you're telling me you don't trust what I did, and that's the reason for this. And I think it's hogwash.
Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I would like to comment because I didn't get a chance to really give my comments earlier on the tabling motion since it shuts down every possibility of discussing anything. And I do appreciate you, Sheriff, that you shared those written quotes with me. I did take the time to go through them. And I did review them as far as what the services were going to be provided under each of the bids and what the price was. I did not have my lawyer hat on. I was looking at it as a supervisor from a financial perspective. What is the best bang for our buck? And the CMC bid, the written bid, did have the lowest quote. And it seemed that they were providing the same services, you know, substantially similar to the other two quotes. I thought, okay, great, we'll go with the lowest one. And I did ask you about staffing concerns. We talked about that, and that there could be some negative impacts if we change companies. But I didn't ask you, because it wasn't on my radar, about the concerns that were raised today with, does CMC have some sort of problem going on, not necessarily at our jail, but in other areas that we need to be concerned about? Like the thing that came up today that perked my interest was Sheriff Apple saying that he was concerned. So I would like to see us have services go forward for at least another 30 days under CMC, have you and others vet that concern, if there's any concerns out there for liability, and then we would know or we would not know, unless we have a way under the 2019 contract to get out if we find that there is some problem.
It's incredulous to me that you listen to Craig Apple, but you're not listening to me. Okay? You know, it just baffles my mind, Claudia. Craig Apple and I have talked about this situation with this company, and he left this company because of money issues. He liked the company completely well. Some of the things he didn't like. Have they had problems elsewhere? I think they have. Like I said, you look at the Google and you'll see the problems that they have. But I know they're starting to venture out countrywide as well. But I also know that you Google the other two, and I saw the same kind of problems, and I'm thinking, my goodness, can you get perfection? You can't. So we've been dealing with these folks for 7 or 8 years now. To me, it's just a lot less headache to try to bring in a whole new administrative staff with we're going to do electronic medical records now. It's just, we're going to have problems no matter who we deal with. And we do have problems, and I deal with them on a daily basis. I call them, and they respond. So that's all I can tell you. But, you know, if you're listening to other sheriffs before you're listening to me, to me that's problematic.
All right, let's I think we've vetted this fully, but I'll return to the chairman of the committee.
The goal of all of this discussion is to ensure that we do have coverage at the best cost for the county. The issues that were brought up, if you think about them, are more of a quality assurance, a quality control issue within the management of the contractor itself. And if it would be the board's pleasure to bring 492 back to life, there might be a different outcome for the vote of this, now that we've had further discussions that this has been a company that has been serving the county for 6 years now without incident. So whatever action is taken, that is the goal I would like to see this board achieve here today. We have a motion in front of us, whatever it takes to clear the table and get
We have a motion.
back on.
We have a motion on the floor. Without objection, I would like to ask the clerk to read the roll.
What are we doing? What are we voting?
What we're voting on is the motion that was made by Supervisor Strau and Loeb, which was to authorize the sheriff and staff to take such actions as are necessary on a short-term basis with the existing bid proposal as a guide to, while some of the issues that were presented here today are vetted in committee. That's the motion that's on the table. The original motion was made by... Right, the original motion was Leggett and Bramer. The amendment was Strau and Loeb. So that's the motion that's in front of us. Yes, sir.
Point of order. What Craig just asked for to ask the people who made the motion to table if they would reconsider their motion to table.
They can withdraw the motion. They can withdraw their.
Hold on. Let me just finish.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I believe you're asking for, correct?
Correct.
And then,
Let's clear the floor so 492 can come back on, whatever it takes.
We need a new motion.
Right. We're going to need a new motion. We have a motion that's on the floor. We're going to need to move on this motion.
Well, what happens if we vote yes for this? Can we not bring up a different motion to reinstitute the original?
No, there's no logic to that. My ruling on that would be that it's out of order. If this is defeated, this option, then you can return to the original motion, I would say. Am I correct? You could then return and untable.
So if we vote this down, we can bring up a similar motion, waive the
You could
rules.
bring up
Waive the rules and bring up a similar motion to 492?
That's correct. That's correct.
So we vote it down.
So vote down, bring 492 back.
It does if somebody makes that as a motion. We'll have to wait and see what the motion is. So I hope everyone has clarity on that.
Well, it's clear as mud.
No, it's pretty clear. At least it's clear to me. I think we need to call the roll on this, but one more time,
All right,
Claudia.
one more question for our county attorney, if she has an answer available. I know this is not... Is there a way for us to get out of the contract in the CMC contract, which I did not review?
Well, the contract isn't drafted yet, so we can certainly draft language in there to get out of the contract. Whether they agree to it or not is a question we'll have to...
Okay.
Let's go with this one.
All right. Let's call the roll on the motion at hand.
Right. Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Ms. Hogan?
No.
Mr. Dickinson? Here. Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
With all due respect to Supervisor Strauss, no.
Mr. Beatty?
Definitely no.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Chairman Conover?
No. The motion fails. Further discussion on resolutions in front of us. Supervisor Leggett?
What does it take to get 492 back?
I believe it requires a simple motion, just to bring it back.
Make a motion, bring 492 back to the floor.
We have a motion by Supervisor Leggett to bring 492 back to the floor. We have a second by Supervisor Diamond.
We have a voice vote.
We now have 492, the original resolution, back on the floor. I'll reopen discussion once again on 492. Supervisor Bramer.
I'd like to make an amendment to 492 such that the contract reflects some sort of get-out-of-jail card from the contract.
No.
If the sheriff finds this subcommittee that we didn't approve,
We didn't vote on that.
Yeah, let's do this first.
find some problem.
Can you hold on that for a second? Let's first vote on bringing it back to the floor. All those in favor of bringing it back to the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed?
Opposed.
And
Had one opposed.
Andrea, is that an abstention on your part, or are you voting to bring it back to the floor?
I
Bring it back.
Okay.
I have to abstain.
Andrea's abstaining. I believe the motion to bring it to the floor passes. And so now we will return to Supervisor Bramer.
Sorry, thank you. I got ahead of myself. On the 492 contract, I would like us to establish some sort of subcommittee and to review the concerns of Supervisor Strauss, and the contract language reflects some way to address that by ending the contract as needed.
Does everyone understand the amendment to 492?
Not an amendment.
No.
Well, the contract
I
is
don't.
awarding the contract, right?
All that is the wording.
It's awarding the contract. You're actually, is it more than an administrative request, or are you actually looking to amend
No,
the
I
actual
really
resolution?
want to amend it.
You really want to amend it?
Yeah, because This is awarding the contract, and typically, once we do this resolution, the county attorney's office will draft the contract. So I would like this resolution to reflect that the county attorney is going to do that, and that we will revet the concerns in committee.
Just one moment. Well, first of all, let's find out if there's a second to that amendment. Is there a second from anyone on the floor relative to that?
Again, what was the
The amendment was, Ms. Bramer's amendment on 492 was to qualify the resolution by reflecting that the contract that's being prepared will have exit provisions relative to some of the issues that were discussed today.
Sure, I'd second that.
Okay, we have a second. Now we can bring that to the floor. Supervisor Simpson?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say this is bringing us back into the same situation where these services are in jeopardy and putting our jail population at risk, because you're putting additional layers of approvals from a company who we've already awarded the contract to, or we're attempting to award the contract to. They could say no, and all of a sudden we're still back trying to find somebody to replace them. So I think we need to deal with a current issue, which is the contract, and if we have a problem with these people, I'm sure that the sheriff will let us know, and we will deal with it appropriately.
We won't have a way out of the contract.
Please speak to the chair. Supervisor Melino.
You know, I believe, give me an idea what kind of restriction we should put on a contract, that we can't be sued 5 times, or we can't be this, or this is the kind of thing with a medical thing, with the hospitals, with the jail. People get sued even though they're not supposed to be suing, but they win. I think we should leave it alone. Let's go through it. We've learned something now, and we haven't had any problems for 6 years. Right. Could we be lucky enough not to have any this year? I think maybe, or maybe not, but it'd be minor. I go with the sheriff. It was vented in committee. Some of you people constantly pound us. We got to get out of committee because it's got to be vented. Well, now we're vented, and we're fighting it anyway.
I think everyone understands the proposed amendment.
Let's move on.
Can we move on voting on the proposed amendment? The clerk will read the roll on the proposed amendment.
Okay, Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Hyde?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Chairman Conover?
No. I should say 492 will be a roll call when it comes up. Any further discussion on 492?
Mr. Chairman, just one observation. Would it be possible in committee for the principals of this company to address the committee, Public Safety Committee, and address the concerns that have been addressed here today? Talk to us about your history. Talk to us about your past litigation, so that we can, as supervisors, can better understand, our upside and our downside.
I will make that request of Chairman Leggett and the sheriff.
Thank you.
Discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Just a comment on Resolution 501, where we're awarding the occupational tax out. And the process here includes one resolution with 7 different awards. I just want to go on for the record that I do agree with several of the awards that are going to be voted on today, but I do not agree with the increase to the Lake George Prevention Visit Bureau of $300,000 to $400,000. But I can't independently vote on that because it's grouped together with multiple resolutions. So I wanted to say, go on the record, that I don't agree with that appropriation today in that resolution.
Any further discussion on, that was 501, Jack?
Yes.
Any further discussion on 501, Ms. Bramer?
Thank you so much. I agree with Supervisor Diamond. I asked at the last committee meeting, I believe it was OCTAC's meeting, for additional information from the CVB about all of their work over the last year, to sort of substantiate the additional $100,000. I did not see that come from them prior to this day, so I am not in support of the extra $100,000, although I won't vote down the entire resolution. I do think that they're doing great work. The Chris Kindle Mart was great. It was really, I think it's going to be even bigger next year. Looking at next year's CVB budget, they've asked for an additional $50,000 just for salaries. I won't get into all those details, Supervisor Molino, but I will say that I looked at the expenditures of the CVB for 2018, and it looks like they're only going to expend about $220,000 of the $300,000 that we awarded them last year. In my mind, some of that money could be shifted to the Civic Center Coalition. They are doing wonderful work. They are one step away from winning the public basketball tournament back for 2020. They have great events throughout the entire year, and they are securing a deal for an exciting new event to come in the summer, and that's been handled by Jeff Mead of the Civic Center along with Tyler Herrick at the Queensberry Hotel. So they're bringing some really great things, and I would like to see us provide more money to them for marketing and for their events. And I think that we have it with that OCTAX money increasing and the CVB not using up all of its money, that we can shift some of that money to the Civic Center. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. You're welcome. And of course, as you know, all of those types of requests can be moved. They can move those requests to the OCTAX committee for consideration. Further discussion on 501.
Mr. Chairman, all due respect to Ms. Kramer, they haven't submitted November and December yet. We just spent $90,000 on that Kindle Mart, so you can add that on to this. I'm not 100% happy that we gave them 4, but it was a kind of a agreement we made to get them to separate also from the chairman of the CVB board sometime this year, and I hope that happens. The other comment about the Civic Center, I'm tired of listening to it. The Civic Center got $1 million from us in the last 5 years. You know, nobody realizes that. Nobody wants to speak about it. You guys, with resolution, you get $100,000 for fields in Glens Falls. I don't get any money in Lake Luzerne for my fields. Come on. I mean, you can't just keep looking at doing more and more for one county. We have this year. This is agreement. This is done. By the end of hopefully January or early February, you'll see what they spent this year. So, I mean, you're looking at numbers that are not finished, but I got them right here myself. So.
All right. 501.
I'm not going to debate it anymore. I'm tired of it.
For the discussion.
It's ridiculous.
Thank you. I'm closing discussion on 501. Discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. On the 478 that we revised earlier, I do want to thank Don DeGraw, Superintendent Hajos, also Administrator Moore, County Attorney Kassane, and Ms. Allen for all of your work helping to revise that resolution and revise the language in the contract. I think that makes a big difference, and I really think that the county needs to continue pursuing the new alternative and even the no action alternative, but really the new alternative, and steer away from the old design. Thank you.
You're welcome. Discussion on other resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for going back to 492, but I'd like to direct a question to Chairman Leggett. Is it legal or possible that we could get a roster of professionals that are providing services at the jail? I don't suspect that that people are being bussed up from Pennsylvania. I mean, I'm sure that they're local professionals that are providing those services. I'm just interested if it would be possible to get a list of those professionals providing various services.
We'll look into that. I don't see why not.
Okay.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you.
I can speak to that. Until a month ago, my husband was one of their employees. So they are hiring local people.
Yeah, and I suspect that too. And I suspect that also another business would very likely hire the same professionals. So I mean, I think we're looking at both the administrative responsibilities and duties of the companies as well as the services that are being provided. Two separate issues.
Very good. Discussion on other resolutions. Then I'll close discussion on all resolutions. I thank everyone for their patience, but this is the way the process works. Everyone gets to have their say, and we take such actions as we take. All righty, let's move on. Vote on resolutions.
Resolution 463, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 464, amending Warren County budget for 2018. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 477, authorizing payment to Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board. Mr. Sokol?
Abstain.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Recuse.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas? We vote on the payment to the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board.
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 482, authorizing airport real property lease agreement with Skimmerhorn Aviation. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Abstain.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 492, authorizing agreement with Correctional Medical Care.
What, was 483 of all?
43 was tabled.
Which one are we on?
492. 483 is a roll call, but it was tabled.
483 is what's tabled.
492 then.
Yep.
Okay,
We're on
thank you.
492.
Thank you.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
522, amending Resolution 629 of 2015, authorizing transfer of funds and amending Warren County budget. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 525, increasing capital project H372, First Wilderness Plan implementation. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 526, increasing on capital project H322 Palisades Road over Brant Lake Inlet Bridge. Mr. Sokol?
Is it possible, because all of these fall under Public Works, to move this all 526 through 5? You have to do them individually?
Individual.
Okay, yes, then.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 527, decreasing capital project H375, 13th Lake Road. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 528, increasing capital project 377 Sunnyside East. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild? Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 529, establishing capital project H381 South Johnsburg Road. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 530, decreasing capital project H329 Warren County Bikeway Improvement. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 531, authorizing transfer of rail car surplus vehicle known as the milk car to the town of Johnsburg. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Congratulations, Andrea. Right? Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Milk for everyone, yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 532, enacting local law number 1 of 2019. Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes. Collective on the rest motion. Mr. Leggett on the motion, the second. Mr. Driscoll on the second. All those in favor of the collective signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'll now offer privilege of the floor. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the board at this time? Absolutely.
I just didn't want to run out without saying something. I do appreciate all the boards working with me through the years, and I also want to say that Don DeGraw and Kevin Hayjos have been great to work with, and I see a big future for the airport, and I already have one hangar up, and the other hangar's being delivered in February. I was going to hold off to spring, but the steel erectors wanted to do it, so my commitment to you guys and to the county and everyone is I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I just want to say thank you.
Rich, thank you very much, and thank you for being here and hanging on through the meeting as well. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Announcements. Supervisor Strauss.
Well, it's not an announcement. I mean, here this morning I did some research on a topic that was coming before us, and I see that Sheriff Apple hasn't liked this outfit. I see that the Attorney General, Schneiderman, speaks to this particular outfit. New York Assembly Health Committee Chairman speaks to this. Commissioner of the Commission of Medical Review Board spoke to this company. New York State Ed Commissioner spoke to this company. Director of the Correctional Association of New York spoke to this company. My question is, how come none of this was brought to my attention before now? I mean, so some people say, well, Stroud, you come up with this at the last minute. I shouldn't have come up with this at the last minute. Somebody should have brought all this to me a month ago. All right, just because I bring it up last minute has nothing to do with politics or anything else. It has something to do with my concern for the county and this organization. That's the only reason why I brought it up.
Thank you. Other announcements? No holiday announcements? Supervisor Bramer.
I do not have a holiday announcement. Bah humbug. No, I'm just kidding. I want to say that the public comment period on the Lehigh Cement proposal ends today. So even if you are somewhat concerned, please at least write to Beth McGee at BEC. Her email address is on the web. And tell her that we would like more time to comment because it ends today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I did want to wish everyone happy holidays, but I also don't know if everybody knew this, but all those delicious, yummy cookies in our room were made by Amanda's mom. So please tell her thank you very much. They were absolutely scrumptious.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Supervisor Simpson, Supervisor Hogan on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.